Give me a nod when you're ready.
I'm like fourth.
Shooter's ready. Stand by.
Hello everyone, this is Gunner Sergeant Matt Gundlach with the 3GIQ podcast. I'm joined here today with Sgt John Glomba, and in the background is Captain Chris Scott. He's kind of censoring things, making sure we don't say anything inappropriate. You might hear him typing in the background, and he is currently playing with the rifle that he won at a match. Anyways, yep, there he goes, playing around. Typical officers. I'm here joined Sgt John Glomba. He's our head coach for the action shooting team. Joined us last summer, and he also spent the summer season with us. Why don't you give us a little background on yourself?
Sure thing, Gunny. So, like I said, we'll go with John. I'm from Noonan, Georgia originally. Left for the Marine Corps there in August 11, 2014. Went to SOI in 2015 as a machine gunner, and it was a 3-5 in a combined anti-armor team before then, and was a platform instructor for the tactics section over at OCS. I got to the team in the summer of 2019 shooting USPSA with the newly founded USPSA pistol team. My first ever exposure to competition shooting. Before then, I'd really just plinked around with, home-built guns or Glocks that I'd bought as soon as I turned 21. So I really didn't have a lot of competition experience or anything close to that realm until I actually met Marines from the shooting team. Got on there by shooting the MIC East match when it was still held in the National Capital Region before we separated East and NCR. Medaled out of there in pistol with a bronze medal and got invited to championships. Didn't do really well there, mostly because of some of the disciplines there were something I was incredibly new to, but I was scouted for some of the potential I had with a pistol, and that was where things all kicked off. It's pretty much downhill from there. Started in USPSA. Didn't do so great, but that's how kind of things go. I just was dipping my feet in the competition world, and I learned a lot. I think Captain Scott and I, on a trip back from one match, we tallied it up in the car, drove to Pennsylvania, and I realized I'd shot about roughly 40,000 rounds of 9mm over a span of like 4 months. So it was a lot to process at the time. I had some time off in between coming back to the team permanently, and that was where I think a lot of stuff kind of clicked finally, because I came back to the team and it felt like I was back doing what I knew how to do somehow, and it picked up from there. Started shooting 3-gun, and I gotta say it's been one of the most eye-opening experiences as far as what you can really push yourself to with 3 different weapon systems potentially at once in one stage. So
and we kind of threw you into the fire as soon as you got to the team, because we literally just went from bullseye pistol, kind of got rid of that, started the action pistol team. Guys from the action pistol team were individuals who were on the action shooting team, and the action shooting team really didn't have a coach, and we knew you had platform instruction time. We knew you knew how to handle yourself on a weapon, and we were like, well, let's make him the coach. He's passionate. He wants to do this, and I mean, I'll be honest here. At first, it was kind of like you flopped in a sense, but then
it felt like it.
And I mean, what, Mid-Atlantic last year?
Yeah, it was the last 2 major matches of the season. I was really just, and it was kind of
you were still feeling it out.
Yeah, I was completely new to the sport, and while I was having a great time doing it, at the end of the day, it's still a job, and I still have to hold myself to a standard, and it was rocky, especially the last 2 matches of the season was a Mid-Atlantic and Memorial, and I DQ'd out of both those for the exact same thing, and that was like a pit. And it was pretty rough, so I went into the MIC season kind of, just resetting my mind.
I'd say the moment it really clicked for you is you were flying out Advon for Mick Pendleton, and you shot the Hard as Hell 2 gun.
Yeah, it was Mick 29 Palms Avon with Staffs on Hudson. And
That's right.
We shot the Hard as Hell 2 gun series out there at the new Cobalt Kinetics range, which I still want to take another trip out there to shoot again, but that's a side point. Yeah, and it was interesting because I got to, I don't know why, for some reason, just the addition of shooting the kit division in there, it tied with me like the relevancy, what we were doing with the Mick season at that time. Trying to tie the combat relevancy and the combat marksmanship aspect to it to a practical shooting competition. Things just like started making sense, and I went out there, placed second in the armor division out of I think it was like 54 some people, and I think 7th overall out of 100 so competitors. And it was definitely when I realized like I actually had potential for the multi-gun world of shooting. And ever since then, I've been able to learn a lot more, take a lot more back to the mix, and especially for our summer shooters now, like I feel like I can actually have the experience to back up what I coach them on, and like develop training plans for them a bit more effectively now that I have the confidence of how I've been performing lately in the 3-gun world. Yeah,
I mean, it's been showing everything that you've done, even the way you've been handling these summer shooters. You've taken like a complete systems approach to training, and it's been effective. Guys are getting out there, they're shooting, they're placing really well. It's been a great summer. It's been a busy summer, and I feel like even with the summer winding down, our schedule just keeps getting even more packed. We're still gonna continue to do, one competition a month. But what we have 10 to 13 September, we're going down to 8th ESB. We have another MTT going down 13 to 16 September with the PMO down at Lejeune. We also have 14 to 17 September. We're going to be working with other units. We're going out to Yuma, and we're also we're going to be doing 2 different MTTs in Yuma, and it's just growing. The schedule continues.
Yeah, and I'm definitely a huge fan of the op tempo, I would say, that we've kind of picked up now. And I've talked with Master about this a bit, and that's like one of the biggest things I like about where we're going now as a team is we're still maintaining the flow of competitive shooting, and we're still maintaining our presence out there. But now units are starting to realize that we have something to offer. And that's the biggest thing, and I use that to talk to the summer shooters a lot too, because these guys at the end of the day, we're not just scouting them for their competitive shooting potential and like training to be competitive shooters. At the end of the day, like if we're looking at them to be permanent members of the team, they got to be good instructors as well. And I think a huge deal that goes into that is just the credibility and experience and confidence you get from competitive shooting is, well, it compounds your ability as an instructor like tenfold. If I can go out to a match and I may not be any Captain Scott and win any rifles or whatnot and take like top 5, but just knowing that I can come out there and I can shoot competitively and I can run a stage proficiently, I can memorize a stage plan, and I'm not going out there and just absolutely flopping. That helps me a lot because it tells me that I know in my mind I know the reasons why and how I'm doing the certain things that I'm going to now go back to the fleet or one of these units is requesting us. And when I coach them, I teach them like the drills or the course of fire, the methods that we use to utilize as weapon systems. When they ask me why do you do it this way, or can you explain to me better like how it works?
You're able to dissect it.
I can dissect it and I can break it down like.
And you could teach it multiple different ways because not everybody is the same and not everybody learns the same way, and you have that ability from seeing other people do stuff.
Oh yeah, and that's that's kind of one of the funniest things. I ended up picking it up over the last Make season. Was one of the best ways I found to communicate with some of these guys, especially for the Block 3 period instruction we have for weapon and target transitions. Because a lot of people you see in there, like they try and dry fire like you tell them like, oh, we're gonna be working on this today, and like on their free time they try to like test it out, and you see really weird stuff. And one of the best ways I was able to like kind of clear their mind or clear their confusion, because the majority of these group of people they're young Marines, 18, 21 years old, and what's one thing 18 to 21 year olds love to do is freaking play video games. And I thought of it one night before we kicked off Block 3, and I started rolling with it. And one of the things I talked about in the class was, playing Call of Duty. Because everyone knows Call of Duty.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone at one point in their life has played a Call of Duty game. And I told them, like, in that game, when you are doing a transition from primary to secondary, is your character's screen bobbing around? Is his, like, arms dipping up and down? Or is it smooth? One gun goes away, another one comes up straight to the face of your player.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing people's faces kind of like the
It
head
clicks.
nods. Yeah, and it's weird because, no one, realistically, because we always have this idea that, video game and real life are incredibly different, and I agree. But in the same context, competition and combat are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
But finding the relevancy in,
There's similarities between both, and
Right.
you can relate to both, and you can use it as learning points.
Right, and by no means am I telling a kid to go out there and I want you to 360 no scope this target, but I'm telling him, find the relevancy and find something you can relate to understand it better. And that's part of like the instructor thing is.
How do you look down the sights in a video game?
Right, you bring the gun up to your face.
Mm-hmm.
The screen doesn't bob down to the iron sights, and you're starting to look over the gun. The gun comes up to the screen, and Cam Scott's over here laughing.
Now I'm green.
Okay, he's green. That's.
I didn't realize how big of a video game nerd you were until this past month when we were in Wisconsin. We went to Mark Yackley's house, and you and Tim Yackley just for like an hour and a half just nerded it out.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge proponent for flight sims, combat flight sims. For everyone listening, combat flight sims is important. A lot of first-person shooters and all that. But I will dabble in some fantasy games. The Witcher 3. For all you out there, if you guys are also just as excited for Season 2 of The Witcher.
Yes.
Okay, good.
I'll nerd out on that too.
Okay, just making sure. But yeah, and it's interesting because there's just... I'm not going to sit here and say, if you are good at Call of Duty, you're good at shooting guns. I'm shut that... we'll shut that facet of the conversation down right now. But it's a good tool to relate to some of the younger crowds because a lot of the times... we see the firearms instructors that we see that are really big names nowadays are, guys who've had years in soft, like they're Asian dudes, like guys like you, like, older guys who've been on the block, and have ran a gun, shot dudes in the face, all that kind of hard charging stuff. And it's hard for, and I'll be realistic, it's hard for someone.
It's finding that relevance because you have guys like, oh, well, what do you know about combat? Like guys in my age group, they'll go out to, yes, I'm old. I know.
Sorry.
You'll have those guys that are my age going out to a Mic and they're like, oh, well, I got my shooting medal. It's called a combat action ribbon. It's
Right.
like, dude, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Like, just because you've been to combat does not mean you are a great marksman. Who cares? Like, we are teaching skills and we're relating to people from all generations on these are the best practices in order to increase the survivability of yourself, the Marines around you, and increase the lethality of the unit you belong to.
Yep.
And it all comes down to killing people.
Yeah. At the end of the day, like if I can teach a kid to, if I have to relate to Call of Duty or Fortnite, whatever freaking video game these kids are playing these days, if that gets a kid to put 6 rounds in the A zone in 2.5 seconds, then it worked. Because at the end of the day, he's leaving that class, better than he was when he left.
You found something to
there.
gain their interest.
And that's that's kind of like the building blocks of instructor foundation, and that's one of like the biggest tenets is know your audience. And
Relatability.
And a lot of people like skip over that, and they fail to use what is the modern thing that you can best relate to your audience with, and you can get their attention with, and you can keep their attention. Because at the end of the day, like if I can get your attention, cool. But if I fail to maintain your attention to the class, either by my attitude or like the way I keep talking or what I reference or how I interact with you, then what was the point of getting your attention in the first place? And if I can get your attention, I can keep your attention by making the course fun and interesting, and at the same time, like you feel like you are legitimately learning and improving something over the duration of the course, that's where I want to be. So, Call of Duty, you guys should play it a little bit. Anyway,
You're also a bit of a history buff. Huge World War II nerd. Who was it? It was Gunny Jenkins. He was over at MTC.
Yeah.
He was like, I think it was him. You were in his platoon, weren't you?
So we worked at OCS together.
That's right. and he went into your room and like you were just geeking out on like World War II in color or something along those lines.
Oh yeah, I had my barracks room at the time at OCS was my headboard was covered with like books about World War II and Vietnam. I had displays. I at one point I had an old M1 helmet with the frog skin camel pattern helmet cover. Like I had all kinds of stuff. I even found at one point in the training areas out there, it was a 8-round M block clip from an M1 that was all rusted over with the round still packed in there. But I'm assuming over time the actual projectile corroded, but it still had the brass casing still jammed in the M block clip.
Oh, nice.
And then before I left there, when we were redoing one of the fexes out there, walking the lanes, my buddies stumbled upon a rusted out Mark II pineapple fragmentation grenade.
Oh, that's always a good fun thing to find.
No, yeah, with the core not hollowed out, as in it was.
Yep, it was a live grenade.
So
whenever I was an instructor at SOI, and we were digging during the basic skills retention exercise, they'd be digging fighting holes, and they'd be like, "Sergeant, I just found a grenade. Leave it alone. Don't touch it. Get out.
Put the dirt back on it. Just call it a day."
We're gonna call the Yodi.
6 hours later. Sorry, Yodi.
Yep. Well, that's the norm.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for any of you guys out there who are also history buffs, I will say I'm also a partaker of memes. By the time I'm 30, I'll either be an excellent World War II historian or I will be an expert at smoking meats. So I think I already know which path I've started down. For any of you guys out there, check out Dan Carlin's podcast on
Hardcore history.
Hardcore history. It was Supernova in the East, and it covers. And this is interesting because a lot of people, when they read World War II history, and especially the campaign in the Pacific, a lot of people really focus on like the Marine Corps and the Army and our campaigns and what we were doing and how that experience was for us. But nobody really delves into the Japanese experience or the civilians and what they were going through. And his podcast is fantastic because he brings in accounts from Chinese citizens at the time, Japanese citizens, both in the home islands and the mainland Japan, and what the climate was like during the build-up to the war, during the content of the war, and right around the atom bombs dropping, and what things were like for the Japanese citizen back home and for the average Japanese soldier too. And it's interesting. One thing I found out, which was kind of surprising me, because I used to be in the camp of thinking, the kamikaze pilots were all super hard charging, brainwashed, like I'm ready to die for the emperor kind of people. In reality, a lot of these people, they hated the Japanese government. Nothing they did was for the Japanese government. The only thing they believed was that the Americans, when they landed on Japan, were gonna, murder their family and, do all kinds of horrible things, and they didn't want to see the Japan they knew and the Japan they grew to love. Like, a lot of these people were artists, musicians, like liberal arts, that type of crowd. And they did what they did in order to preserve their family and the life that they knew back in Japan, the life that they enjoyed. They didn't do anything for the emperor or for the Empire of Japan, none of that. And that was one of the weirdest things. Just reading about the stewards that would give them their final meal and their final drink before the night before their flight out, to attack American fleets. And these guys were like crying, were just drinking their sorrows away, like absolutely, like
That's a different mindset. I mean, we don't, we do everything we have, for my family, yes, but it's also for patriotism, for love of country,
And that was the climate in Japan. Was just Japan, the Japanese military dragged Japan into the war, because at the time when they were invading China and whatnot, the government had almost zero control. Like, the Japanese military was completely autonomous, and they were invading Japan. And what could the Japanese government do? They couldn't say, no, come back after victory after victory after victory, because how would that look? The Japanese government has no control of their military, but the military is victory after victory, taking land, resources, getting all this stuff back to the mainland, making the Japanese people greater than what they were perceived as, during the World War I interwar period, where people just saw Japan as another third world nation. There was no way they were going to be able to stand up to, the great nations like Russia or Japan or the UK or America. And once that started happening, the Japanese people were in overwhelming support, and the Japanese government had no choice.
Wow.
And yeah, stuff like that. So if you're into like super in-depth breakdowns of history to that level, Highly recommend the podcast. Great for road trips.
I'm listening to King of Kings right now.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
Solid one, yeah.
Kind of going back into the gun thing, and after
yeah.
taking a long tangent.
3-gun, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 3-gun. So we're going out to the Great Lakes 3-gun Championship up in Wabash, Indiana, next weekend. What have you been focusing on in order to get the team ready for that?
So the big thing that kind of a lot of us, still run issues with, and everyone tries to follow Horners for, and we try to break down which of those specific ones are we really kind of lacking in. Shotguns, quad loading. Quad loading is a big deal for our guys, especially for some of the guys that are still using the older style loading ports and the M2s.
Mm-hmm. They haven't been ported out yet.
Yeah, haven't been ported out yet. And thank God we're getting on that finally. P2S has been a great help in that. But the big thing is quad loading on the move. If there's one thing I want my guys to do, it's practice your quad loads and be good at it and be consistent, right? You don't have to be if you're not the fastest guy, that's fine. But if you're guaranteeing that every time you grab 4 off your caddy, you're getting 4 in the gun, on the move, that's good enough for me. Because you can kind of make that time up elsewhere. And then long range. Long range is a huge deal for me personally, and for a lot of the guys. We focus a lot on confirming and guaranteeing our holds are solid, because one thing I tell them, and it's kind of important, is we come out and train, and I tell them, come out and shoot what you think your holds are, and then, shoot to refine them, because in a stage, or when you go to a match, you can't go up to the stage and, ask the guys, hey, in this 5 minutes, can I shoot these targets real quick to confirm my holds?
Nope.
No. You have to know your holds and be confident. You have to know at 100 yards is where I need to hold, at 150, and so on and so forth. You need to build that confidence in your head. And Straylock Pro, great apps for that. But and I'll say limited experience, because again, I've only been shooting now consecutively for about a year. Just seeing physically through the optic, and on the range especially, and burning into my mind what the reticle looks like when I see splash on steel at 250, 300, 350, or whatever. That instills more confidence in me than an app generating my data. Now it's great because Straylock,
Well, it's kind of like whenever I'm training,
right.
I'm gonna pull out Straylock Pro,
right. Yeah,
and
exactly.
I'm gonna look. Okay, so based on today's weather and everything, this is what my holds are telling me, and it really hasn't changed at all. It's all pretty much the same data. Nothing really changes, but it just gives me all right, got it. Now I'm gonna go and I'm gonna confirm those holds and make sure.
Yep.
That way, whenever I get out to the match, I can easily, before I get on stage, I can just kind of quickly memorize where my holds are gonna be for each yard line. Sometimes if it's 9 targets that are gonna be out there, I'll have a pad or a paper on my arm with what the distance is where I'm going to be holding, or I just burn it into my head. A lot of the times I don't want to take my eye out of the sight, so I memorize what my holds are going to be.
Yep.
And I just go out there. But a lot of it comes down to training and being familiar with the weapon system and the optic that you're using.
Yep. Confidence is the biggest thing, and that's one thing that kind of drives me a little bit, especially when planning for a stage. Is you see it a lot of times too. I think Go Fast Don't Suck actually made a meme about this, but you see so many guys who see Captain Scott, for example, shoot a stage a certain way, and he smokes, he crushes that stage, beating open times, shooting tac offs.
Yep.
And you see all these guys looking that was a really good stage plan. I'm gonna do that, right?
But then they screw it up.
But they don't have the same confidence with a pistol like Captain Scott does.
They're shooting outside of their comfort zone.
They're shooting outside their comfort zone, and they're trying to instill confidence in themselves that they haven't done in training.
Mm-hmm.
And Staff Sergeant Goking and I, we had a long discussion about it, because he's big on the training aspect too, the mental game.
Yeah.
The mental game is huge, and a lot of people I think overlook it. People think I have the best guns and gear. I have, I put thousands of rounds through my gun. I'm gonna go out there and crush it. And they get to the stage and they're like, I don't know about that one, or I'm gonna try this. And when they come up to the plate, they're still in their mind second guessing their stage plan and second guessing their holds, and that ruins them.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could have you could have a Razor 1 to 10. all this nice stuff, but if your mind isn't there and like telling yourself like I'm gonna shoot this and I know that round is gonna connect, and if it doesn't connect the first round, I know what I need to do to follow up to and fall fast to get that second hit, or whatever it might be. Guys come up there and it just kind of like all goes away, and we all know like once that first like portion of the stage, that first array kind of goes to hell in a handbasket,
they peter out, and it's like everything just train wrecks.
A series of compounding failures. And
I think the biggest thing, and I wasn't always like this, and a lot of it comes down to training, a lot of it comes down to being comfortable around with the guys you are, but you can't have any negatives going into a match.
No.
Like, clear that shit out of your head. Like, focus on the positives. Hey, dude, you're at a match. Like, you're getting paid to do this. Or you're out here having fun with a bunch of your friends. Doesn't matter. Be happy that you're out here.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it comes down to. Be happy you have the ammo to train. Like, we all... I think every single one of us, we're just extremely grateful for the experience that we have here, but we've all worked really damn hard to get where we are.
And that's a sometimes even when I don't perform to my best, like middle end of this year, right? Like that long range stage absolutely went to hell in a handbasket, because when I was something I screwed up, and I realized it when I got back and I could diagnose it, but like. I cranked my windage dial to it was like I was like 5 or 6 clicks right when I was tightening down the zero stops, and something I didn't pick up, and the long range stage with the crap. But at the end of the day, like I was out there for free, getting paid to shoot this match, and that's just one thing that I screw up that I can now take back and like realize like, hey, maybe I shouldn't do that.
Like one thing, here's one thing, like. And I'll say this Marine Corps wide, I don't care. Marine Corps has had a series of zero defect mentalities, and I think that's dangerous.
Oh, it is.
Because, like, if you're training, if you're out here doing this type of stuff, like, training is the time to screw up.
Absolutely.
Even here at the matches, this is just training for us to get out there and learn different techniques to train the rest of the Marines in the Marine Corps. Yeah. So you learn from a series of mistakes. You will learn more from a series of mistakes, and you will learn more from other people's series of mistakes. And as long as you remember that and figure out what you can do to fix that, you're going to be successful.
Yep, that's a big deal right now. Is just risk averse training, and a lot of people don't realize that if I execute a mediocre plan perfectly just because it's safe,
it's still a mediocre plan.
It's still a mediocre plan. And in reality, it's not going to hold up snuff. It's just not. And same thing goes with training. If I set up a super basic drill, or if I'm just practicing something super basic or super easy, and I can crush it 100 times, it doesn't matter. Because I could grab a PFC and tell him, like, hey, shoot this 20-inch piece of steel at 100 yards in 3 seconds. And he could probably do it in the standing. It doesn't mean he's a good shot if he does it in like a second or 2 seconds. No. It just means he executed he met the mediocre standard 100%.
Yep.
And now if I make that, but you see where I'm going with this, but risk averse training is just a big pet peeve of mine. I am one to try and like kind of push the
envelope to where I'm the same way, if I have machine guns at a support by fire and I have a maneuver element hitting the objective, I want to push those machine guns to fire as long as I can, getting my Marines that are pushing to the objective as close to the objective as fire before I cut the machine guns off. And you have to do that in training. That way people gain the same confidence.
Exactly.
Or because combat, that's not time to play those games.
Yeah, like, combat is not very friendly to risk-averse training.
No.
And you know that well better than I do. For anyone you're wondering, I'm a massive 2MU baby, so Gunny here obviously has a lot more experience in that regard. But there are some things that you just accept as fact because it has been set in stone through history and doctrine. Risk-averse training will do you.
It doesn't do you any favors.
It does no good. Doesn't no good. At the end of the day, that's just not it. So I mean, with Gunny here as my witness, I'm agreeing with him. We're both on the understanding that you should push your machine guns to the absolute limit of the MSL before you call them off. All right, moving on.
What's the MSL?
Minimum safety line.
Okay.
Or
Minimum
safety line, limit line. It changes who he talks to. In reality, it all means the same thing. Don't get your panties in a twist.
Half the civilians that are going to be listening to this aren't
Have
going to
no
know
idea.
what we're talking about.
It's just how close you can safely, effectively utilize your machine guns based on their cone of fire and their actual beaten zone when it hits the ground by the time it reaches their target.
Okay, now that we got that defined.
All right.
So obviously next week we're going to Great Lakes. What match are you most looking forward to this season? Because we got a couple. We're going to RO, the Pro-Am match in September, and then in October we're going to Memorial 3-gun, and then in November we're going to shoot Fort Benning multi-gun.
Yep. And I don't want to speak too soon, but I think you might already know my answer.
Mm-hmm.
Memorial last year was an absolute blast, and
You kinda.
yeah,
He DQ'd at that match.
Yeah, I bombed it the night of the second day. All right, guys, I got the majority of the match out of the way. Please, cut me some slack. But no, in all honesty, like there was a lot of fun stages I got to shoot.
And this year they're gonna have a plane out there where we're gonna be shooting off of a plane.
I am so ready to do some tubular assaulting. You have no idea. But yeah, that's probably one of the biggest I'm looking forward to. Just knowing that the type of match they host, and the reasons why they do it. And Eric is a great member of that community, and the Memorial 3-gun family. I love seeing every match. He's my hidden soulmate for anyone out there wondering.
Glomba has a bromance with him.
Yes. But yeah, I don't want to speak too soon though because I'm still looking forward to Wisconsin or Indiana. I'm still looking forward to the Pro-Am, and especially looking forward to staffing it. That'll be my first major match I've staffed. We staffed Mid-Atlantic, and I staffed hard as hell, but I think Pro-Am will be like a much bigger show out, and I'm looking forward to meeting all the people that we're bound to meet there. And then Fort Benning, I know I saw a post on Instagram from Nate Staskowitz about some of the target ideas they have, and my brain hurt a little bit, but it's going to be exciting.
I didn't see that yet. Does a lot of it have to do with height over bore?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah,
we were talking to him about that whenever we were out at the Tri-Gun match.
Oh, yeah.
He was like, "Hey, what kind of targets would you guys like to see out there?" And we were like, "Height over bore."
Yeah, it's a IPSC, it's a clear or open face IPSC in the back, and it has a no shoot sandwiched right over it, a full no shoot, and then it's got little slots cut out for you to shoot in between the no shoot or shoot through the no shoot into the actual open paper exposed needed. But it's like a little 2-inch or 2x4 square, and like 3 of them on each target. It's like 1 round each. He was toying with the possibility of, and I'm a fan because I know at Nordic I crushed those clays that were sandwiched in that no shoot. So bring it on, buddy. But yeah,
I just want to be able to shoot a cruiser weapon there, but obviously they can't do that.
Look, if they can't satisfy my 31 needs, then I will have to say I'm not looking forward to the match. I will shoot out of necessity. But if there's no 240 240 or higher, I might be slightly disappointed. I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's definitely a match I'm looking forward to, most because I know the guys have shot it before. Last year, I think before the mixed season started, we were supposed to shoot it, and then the whole COVID thing popped up, kind of kept us from going. But I'm definitely looking forward to this year. I also have some friends down in Fort Benning, so I'll see you guys soon if you're listening. Yeah.
What's today? Which match have you had the most fun at?
You're putting me in the spot, and
Well, like this season.
does the mixed season also count?
Sure.
All right, I'll say hard as hell.
Okay.
Hard as hell was very physically challenging as far as natural terrain goes. I mean, one stage I was hauling a mock-up of a 1917 water-cooled 30 cal while shooting my pistol with one hand, and I have never felt more in tune with John Baslone in my entire life than that one stage. And I think that one stage alone takes the cake, because that was pretty cool. Because I was shooting like 6-inch pie plates at like 25 or 30 meters while walking uphill with a 30 cal on my shoulder. Like, I can't get any more. That's the peak of Marine Corps shooting team badassery, in my opinion.
I will say this for those who don't know who John Baslone is. Granted, I know all the Marines will know this, but for you civilians who have never heard of John Baslone, look him up, watch the Pacific, the episode in the Pacific where you see him just mowing down a bunch of Japanese, you know, having that machine gun just resting on his forearm, burning a scar in his arm. It's an instant hard-on.
Yep, Grandpappy all machine gunners in the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm. Other than that, is there anything that you'd like to leave the listeners with?
Oh man, you know I'm a young guy, so I know there's a lot of people out there who are well than I am. But there's one thing I can give you guys as a young guy, as an infantry marine, as a 3-gun competitor instructor. Speed, surprise, and violence of action will always win the day. I can move fast, I can shoot fast, and that's all you need to do to kill. Be lethal.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. And if you have any questions for us, feel free to reach out. We'll have everything listed in the description. Other than that, have a great day.
See you guys.